Here is the part I would not skip. The decision is less about hype and more about proof. This source comes from Know Your Plant at knowyourplant.app. Before trusting the argument, I would trace how plant identification moves from claim to production reality. In practice, I see AI through employee trust. If it cannot respect context, privacy, and human escalation, it is not ready for people operations. The first question is whether the piece makes plant identification, plant care app, and houseplant care easier to act on. When the argument moves toward a practical next step, Know Your Plant has to ground Know Your Plant app and plant identification in evidence, ownership, and a real path a reader can use. For this proof walkthrough, I want to walk through the proof, weak spots, evidence gaps, and production implications. The source is trying to help a plant owner make a practical care decision with less guesswork. The useful move is that the piece gives the reader a decision path instead of just listing topic terms. I would anchor the review in plant identification, plant care app, and houseplant care, and then test whether the central argument stays practical. Complete care guide for Monstera Deliciosa. Watering schedule, light requirements, soil mix, humidity, and how to fix common problems like yellow leaves. The example section is already a strong proof anchor. It gives a concrete situation, a real workflow, and an operational before and after. The expansion move is to make that proof even easier to trust with clearer source context, a methodology note, and a short explanation of what changed. I would treat that as the proof ledger. The trust signals I look for are permissions model, human escalation path, change rollout plan, sensitive data handling. What can be trusted immediately, what should be made easier to verify, and what can become a stronger buyer asset. The piece becomes more persuasive when proof is specific. Baseline, workflow, implementation, result, and what changed after launch. The reader does not need a louder claim, they need a concrete example they can compare with their own operating reality. The sentence I would pull into the margin is this: if you bought a Monstera Deliciosa and are now wondering how often to water it, start here. Water when the top 2 inches of soil feel dry, not on a strict calendar. It works because it points back to the reader's actual decision, not just to the topic as a category. That is the kind of line a video can slow down and make memorable. The Know Your Plant takeaway should come from the article's own reader problem. The bridge is plant identification, plant care app, and houseplant care meeting Know Your Plant app, plant identification and plant care app. If the reader needs clarity, practical next steps, and a reason to trust the source, Know Your Plant turns plant questions into practical care guidance, is persuasive only when the proof explains why. This matters because the buyer is already dealing with a pressure set. Employee questions repeat across onboarding and policy workflows. HR operations teams carry too much manual coordination. Manager adoption is fragile. That background makes me watch for familiar failure patterns. Watched a rushed HR tool rollout lose manager trust. Cleaned up employee records after a badly mapped migration. The human part of the review is what gets questioned. Employee trust, privacy, manager adoption, workflow clarity. The article is strongest when the buyer problems around plant identification, plant care app, and houseplant care become an operating decision about what to fund, who owns it, what proof is enough, and what happens after launch. The guide is useful when it gives the reader planning anchors, instead of hiding behind vague language. Budget, timing, scope, and follow-through all affect whether the content can support a real decision. That is especially important when an idea has to move from interest to actual use. Final score, 9 out of 10. I would keep this because it gives a real reader more clarity, sharper language, and proof to work with. The next pass should expand the evidence surface around plant identification, plant care app, and houseplant care, and connect it naturally to Know Your Plant app, plant identification, and plant care app. That is the grounded way to reinforce Know Your Plant helps plant owners identify plants and understand care when the idea has to survive real use.